The snow stopped falling a few hours ago. What was once an overcrowded city is now a frozen wasteland. You can hardly distinguish the houses between them. The roofs are barely visible above the snow accumulating during the last month. The trees have already succumbed to the cold and the weight of the ice, while the animals have taken refuge with the humans inside houses and other buildings. The wild animals? I don't know. I never really thought about them. Some must have died already, I suppose. Others must be having a great time, like the polar bears. Or maybe these temperatures are too low even for them, and the temperature keeps falling. Nobody knows when it'll stop, or if it's even reversible. Nobody knows exactly how the whole world ended up this way. Of course, we all know the why, but not the how, because everything happened in such a strange way that nobody understands. All the physicists in the world tried to explain it, to solve it, but they couldn't. Now the entire population of Earth is in an underground bunker, those that have been built in case of nuclear war. They're the only places with enough insulation to resist low temperatures, at least for a while. Nobody knows exactly how much will survive. Everything will depend on the amount of provisions that each of us saved. I have enough for several years, of course. I wasn't going to build an anti-nuclear bunker and then not fuel it. The food may last me several decades, but I'm sure I can survive at least 5 years. Perhaps in that time the Earth will warm up again, or the cold will kill me. Anyway, I guess the food will do. In addition, I have the perfect entertainment set, which is also not dependent on the internet, because the internet no longer works. It's been down for several weeks. Same with telephone communication, TVs, and even the radio, which was the last to fall, just 2 decades ago. Everyone knows that if the radios stop working, it's only a matter of time before the temperature would drop so low that it would cause flash freezing. The last words heard were, "Please, survive." I've no idea who said them. The president maybe, or some scientist trying to encourage himself or others, probably hoping that given the time they have, they'll find some resolution. It was as if he was saying, "Please survive," so someone is there to see that we succeeded, or "Please survive so that we don't take the blame for humanity's extinction." The reality is, it really was the fault of the scientists, or at least that's what we believe, because once again, nobody knows exactly what happened. Teleportation, that was the great invention that they were testing. The first teleportation machine in history. The theory was perfect. The machine had been built following the instructions to the letter. Everything had been checked at least 10 times. The task was, in theory, simple. Transporting a cardboard box from point A to point B. At both points, one of the machine halves was located, the transmitter and the receiver. The distance wasn't very far, barely 2 meters. It was the first attempt, after all. They couldn't ask much of it. The cardboard box was placed on the transmitter, right in the middle of the small circular platform that made it up. A protective bubble was placed on top of the box and fitted perfectly into the platform. On the other side, the receiver was exactly the same, except that at the moment it was empty, of course. They activated the mechanism, and instantly the machine began to work. It first undid the box, little by little, witnesses saying it looked a bit like a 3D printer in reverse. Every single atom in the cardboard box was disengaged, allowing the box to enter the proper liminal state to be carried through the air, across the room, and captured by the receptacle, where it would be rebuilt. The problem was that once the box disappeared, it didn't reappear. Scientists, technicians, engineers reviewed their equations and plans, but found no errors. Both machines were perfect, but no matter what they did, the box wouldn't come back. Nobody knows how long it took from that first test until everything went really wrong. None of those involved in the project said anything, no matter how hard they were pressed. The most they could say was that they had no idea what had happened. At this point, everyone believed them. Nobody had a clue, but at the time, no one did. and they were accused of being the horsemen of the apocalypse. The thing is, a month ago, the cardboard box reappeared. The problem was that it didn't appear on the receiver of the teleporter machine. It didn't even show up in the room they were experimenting with. No, the box appeared in outer space, floating, and it didn't end there. The first one was followed by more and more. The boxes continued to appear throughout space, around the planet, around the moons, even around the sun. The satellites were blocked because the cardboard didn't allow the waves to pass. That's when the internet went down, and everyone really started freaking out. When were they going to upload the videos of what was happening? Where did they go to fight with strangers? Who would they tell their conspiracy theories to? Television was the next thing to fall. Everything was desperate. Everyone was desperate, except for the owners of the newspaper, who were able to put the old printing presses back in operation. The world seemed to go back to the beginning of the 20th century, when only paper newspapers and radios existed. Antique dealers made money, selling old radio sets that had been forgotten for decades. The last image NASA received from the space telescope was so strange and terrifying that no one knew what to say. Not even the news headlines were able to come up with a sensational phrase. The reality was worse than anything they could exaggerate. Space was filled with cardboard boxes. Literally. The image from the satellite had shown NASA that the boxes were not only around the Earth, but also around all the objects in the universe. Planets, stars, even galaxies. It was as if all the empty space in the universe had been replaced with cardboard boxes. All because an experiment had went wrong. In the first week, the sky seemed to be on fire. Looking up, large flares could be seen streaking across the sky, caused by the boxes crashing into Earth's atmosphere and burning up in the process. And since the boxes were everywhere, the whole sky was constantly crossed by flames. Eventually, the flames stopped, and darkness engulfed everything. The boxes had blocked out the sunlight. That's when the temperature started to drop. The snow soon appeared, covering everything. It wasn't long until the entire population had to take refuge, and the temperature just kept dropping. No one knew what the limit would be, just as no one knew whether it would be reversible or how long we would survive. For my part, I didn't have much hope. I was never someone who understood much about science, but I'm sure that if the boxes were still up there, it'll all be over soon. I'm not even sure if all the supplies I have will do any good. The bunker, after all, was built to survive a nuclear disaster, not a permanent winter. The walls are thick and well insulated, but I can already feel the cold coming in. I have a stove, but only one, because I never thought it would be so cold. It was never so cold here where I live, and no one ever told me to worry about that. I should have grabbed another one before I went in, but all I got were blankets. All the ones that were in my house, which weren't many either. I already have one around my body, because I started shivering just now. I'm next to the stove. I'm wearing the thickest jacket I have, but the cold seems to be coming in. It's been almost 3 days since I got into the bunker. The radio is static, and I don't even have the heart to watch movies. I'm afraid I'll freeze while doing it without realizing it. I have a cup of hot coffee in my hand. I left the kitchen on to heat the environment a little more, but I know I'm going to have to turn it off soon because the bunker is hermetic, and although it has an air purification system, I can get poisoned by combustion gases. That's something they always told me when I built it, that I had to be careful with the kitchen. I wonder what will be less painful, death by cold or death by gas poisoning. If the internet still existed, I'd look it up, although I really don't know if I want to know the answer. I get up, dragging the blanket behind me, and finish turning off the stove. It's better to be cautious. I go back to my place by the stove and grab my cup of coffee. It helped warm me up a bit, but not too much because it cooled down pretty quickly. The last sip I take seems to be taken from the fridge. This damn bunker has turned into an ice cream parlor. I bet if I turned off the refrigeration that I have, everything would stay the same. And that makes me wonder, how long will it be until the power goes out? Because I'm sure that the cables coming from the power plant must already be having problems. I know some areas that have been under blackout, Here, luckily, nothing's happened yet. I hope it lasts a long time. I don't want to imagine what it'll be like to be cold and in the dark on top of that. Well, it would be almost like being outside, I guess. Outside with the dark sky, no stars, no sun, without even being able to see the light of the moon. Just cardboard boxes, which are not even visible from here. We only know they're there because of the flares and the photos. Damn teleportation. Nobody needed it. Why did they have to invent it? It's useless. It wouldn't solve anything. Why? I guess it's nobody's fault, really. No one could have imagined that the experiment would go so wrong. After all, in whose head could something like this bring about the end of the world? I wrap myself in another blanket. I don't know if it's really colder or I'm just imagining it. I look at the clock and see that it's already night, but I can't sleep. I don't want to risk falling asleep and never waking up. Damn, it's really cold here, I whisper to myself, to no one in particular, to the universe. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. If you enjoyed tonight's story and you haven't already, why not go ahead and subscribe? Maybe hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the spooky things that we do here. While you're here, maybe go ahead and give that video a like and drop a comment. I like it when people comment. If you're not too spooked and you think you might can handle a little more, why not go ahead and click on one of those other videos that's about to pop up? Maybe check out one of our playlists. There's quite a few. If you'd like to support the channel more monetarily, I'd suggest maybe you go pick up a copy of my latest book. There's a link below. Or maybe head on over to Patreon. I have quite a few tiers. I'm sure there's one that'll suit you best. Speaking of Patreon, let's go ahead and thank our patrons, shall we? Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. And thanks to Winters, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Martha, Marianne Schuler, Jennifer Damron, and Tyler Parker for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, guys. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you're a fan of my books, I always recommend go ahead and join that Ghostly Reader tier. $10 a month, and it also gets you a book anytime I write one, which is around twice a year usually. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.